Hi, everyone. I am Ashley Bray. I'm here with my colleague, Annie Balot. And this is another Academic Success webinar series. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Today, we are going to be talking about habit building. Very important as we are continuing to kind of get into midterms. And a few housekeeping items before we get started.
You can find our social media handles. We're on Instagram at ARC_Georgetown, and Facebook is at ARC Georgetown. We post a lot of good tips and tricks, any workshops or webinars, any type of events. We post announcements there, as well as we have a lot of good resources on our website, which is academicsupport.georgetown.edu. You can find our drop-in foreign language tutoring hours, which we offer in Spanish, French, and Latin in the specific classrooms. Can be found on our website. There's a good link for our campus resources to find different types of resources across campus that you're looking for, and our archived ARC newsletters can also be found on our website. So lots of good information. Please follow us. Please look at the website for good information.
Lastly, we just want to make sure everyone's aware of our upcoming webinars. Obviously, today we're talking about habit building. Last week or 2 weeks ago's webinar, Getting Back on Track, is already posted on our website, along with the archived webinars from the past 2 semesters. Our next webinar coming up will be Thursday, October 11th, and we'll be talking about managing the online classroom, which is great for many of our students who are taking online classes. So make sure you join us on Thursday, October 11th at 1 p.m. We will be using the same Zoom link we use now. All right, so today we wanted to spend a little time talking about habit building. I think we're still early enough in this semester where it's a good conversation to have, but we're, familiar with our courses, you've kind of gotten the lay of the land, kind of gotten some comfort at this point in the semester, but we're not too deep in where maybe some bad habits are starting to appear. So the first step of creating good habits and habit building is starting where you are. And I think one of the most important things when we talk about building new habits or creating change or trying something new is that there's no perfect place to create new habits. Like, you don't have to wait until you've gotten this grade in this class, or you don't have to wait until a certain point in this semester. You can start where you are today as long as it's commitment. Our second kind of bullet point we're talking about is that it's the commitment to change plus the action helps to develop the new habit. So it's a really important thing. Hi, if you could just mute yourself.
It's Wesley. I want to say hi. All right.
So we can just make sure everyone's muted and we can take questions at the end. So as I was saying, that the second bullet point we want to talk about is that the commitment to change plus the action of the change creates the new habit. And so I think the really important piece here is when we talk about the commitment. While there might be no perfect place to start, it's really important that you're committed to making the change, and then really kind of laying out an action plan. So we can talk about that in a couple of slides coming up. Another important thing I want to point out when you're kind of in these self-discussions about starting a new habit is to start small, right? We're not going to take on everything overnight, right? Rome wasn't built in the day, but start small. And this is, the point of this is to aim to incrementally reinforce keeping the habit. So what little things are you doing to help reinforce that good habit, reinforce the change? And then really thinking about the steps involved in creating the plan, right? We can have an idea and a goal, but those goals are only successful if we really look at how we're planning that out. And we have an idea of challenges we might face, what the next step is, and how are we reaching that goal. And then again, creating a plan or goal. So when you start thinking about a new habit, start start small, start where you're at, but really start thinking about what is my commitment to this? What is my plan in creating this new habit? And can I set up a goal or write out a plan to help reinforce that commitment to creating the new habit? All right, the second topic we want to go over today is improving your environment. So construct an environment so that your daily choices help you achieve your goals, right? It's really hard to quit your daily Starbucks habit if you are walking by Starbucks every day or going to Starbucks every day with a friend. You might want to change your route or say, I'll meet up with you in class. And some things when we talk about environment, we want to consider environmental factors. And we're going to talk about this in relation to more academic habits, study skill habits that we hopefully everyone's working on creating. So where are you studying? One of the biggest things Annie and I talk about in our work with students and in past webinars is you should not be studying in your room on your bed. That's a place for sleep, for relaxation. How are you creating an environment that replicates a testing situation or replicates when you're going to have to put this habit into action? So those are things to consider with. Who are you studying with? Is it helpful to study with other people? Is it not helpful? Do you guys get distracted? What are your tools or resources? I think when we talk a lot about setting time to study or getting into the environment, study environment, things like, do I have all my pens and papers? Do I have all my articles and books? Do I have the PowerPoint slides? Those are things that should already be taken care of when you show up to study, right? Those are not part of the study process. Those are kind of pre-planning things to think about. Again, purposeful hours. This is something that we hit home a lot. How are those hours meaningful? How are they intention? What's your intention for using that hours? Again, this goes back to you should have everything set up. You should have everything in an environment that works for you. You should have your study partner. You should have your tools and resources so that you make sure when you finally get down to studying, it's very purposeful. And the last piece is probably the most important piece is know your distractions, right? If it's social media, if it's Amazon, is it the news, is it, Netflix, any number of things, talking to friends. Know what your distractions are and then come up with a plan to try to help avoid or at least minimize those distractions. And I think one of the most powerful tools for students is not necessarily knowing that you're going to be able to kind of review every distraction, but identifying what your distractions are so that when they can come up, you can kind of reset.
Great. Moving on. So Ashley mentioned this before, but really being intentional and wanting to change a habit. If you don't want to change a habit, it's going to be a lot harder to actually put those steps into place. So really being intentional, making a commitment to change a habit. So thinking about what are your plans to support your new habit? Once you are developing this new habit building, what is the plan in place? Creating those small steps, putting a game plan together so that you can be successful. How do you plan to follow through? And intentionally repeat the behavior. That is definitely high priority, is to continually implement a habit until it becomes routine, right? Until it does not become something you have to think about. It becomes second nature. So that's really, really important. Another thing to think about is, can you find an accountability partner? Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a parent or a guardian, maybe it's a professor. Someone that will hold you accountable to the intention and to the goal that you've set for yourself. So like Ashley mentioned, an example of wanting to change your Starbucks habit. Maybe you decide to walk to class with another friend on certain days because that friend is not as much of a Starbucks user as another friend. So thinking about who can really support you in your goals moving forward and who's going to really push you and keep you accountable is something to think about. Wonderful. So the 3 P's. So we're going to look at patience, practice, and perseverance. Okay. The first P, like I mentioned, patience. Patience is definitely required in habit building. Habit building takes patience, You want to build habits over a period of time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, right? It's something that's going to take time, take persistence, take repetition, put it into place. That's where coming up with that game plan is really important. Are you setting a notification every single day to encourage yourself to do this habit? Are you coming up with a person that can hold you accountable? So implementing it over time definitely takes patience. Along that, practice, because keeping the activity reoccurring deliberately is necessary in order the habit to shift from being mindful to being habitual. So it's really important, practice. Put it into practice, put it into place so that it shifts from being something you think about to just being second nature. And then perseverance. There's going to be frustrating moments. There might be some setbacks that you have to endure, which we're going to talk about. But thinking about how can you persevere? What types of solutions or problem solving can you come up with that if you are to face a setback, how can you break through that and continue building on your habit and be successful?
Fantastic. Finally, we want to talk about setting up if-then eventualities. And so the purposes of this is that oftentimes with life, there are outside factors that we personally don't have control over, right? We can control how we react to outside factors, which kind of plays into this if-then eventuality scenario, but we can't control the outside factors. And part of that is just being prepared, right? So if you're trying something new, you're trying to create a new habit, and an outside kind of environmental factor pops up that can kind of get you off course, it's important to come up with these scenarios in your head. Think about not necessarily what could go wrong, but what might impact you in that moment and how can you react to it. So think about the scenario. How is it going to potentially impact your progress, right? Kind of playing these things out in our head. And then while you're thinking about that, right, role-playing it out in your head, how do you identify solutions to kind of cut out the uncertainty of the moment, right? So when most of us are kind of creating new habits and something happens to us that's out of control that could potentially impact our progress, it's not that we're not committed to the habit, it's the uncertainty of how that can impact our progress that sometimes trips us up. So by thinking through these scenarios, by coming up with, potential solutions, by thinking through what can happen, you can really take the uncertainty out of that moment and really reinvigorize your commitment to creating the new habit and staying on track. Finally, this is something we talk a lot about in terms of study time and time management and calendar setup, but I think is also very pertinent to this topic. You can't buy time, you trade it, right? So if you think about, how busy we are in our day-to-day lives with scheduling and classes and internships and jobs and clubs and families and all the things that go on, oftentimes you get into time conflicts, right? You might cut out space, let's say, on Tuesdays from 1 to 2 to do this webinar with us. But maybe an important study group meeting comes up, or your professor had a meeting you need to meet with them, or CAPS had to change your meeting time. Those are all important things that need to be attended to. So some of it is prioritizing. Do you go meet with your professor, go to the new CAPS appointment, go to the study group, but how do you trade in that time, right? So you wouldn't forget the webinar or forget the study session altogether. You would trade that time in. Is there another time that you can listen to the webinar? And the most important piece of this is not buying time, but trading it. It's trading that time on the calendar, marking it, making it permanent, and making it part of the schedule so that your intentions are to continue with it, so you're not impeding your progress towards your goals.
Absolutely. One other thing we want to talk about is creating a wins list. And this may sound funny, but wins create momentum. If we continue to think about how much progress we're making, the good things that we're doing, informing our habits and re-emphasizing our habits, that's a good thing to think about. We're creating a win. So thinking about the daily wins. Okay, today I was able to accomplish the steps I wanted to in order to, not go to Starbucks or to do the habit that we have in mind. So focus on the daily wins. Eventually you can look back and say, wow, I did this over a 2-month span, a 3-month span. And again, it just becomes second nature. So look at the CREDA wins list, focus on the daily wins. And then reflect on how you achieved that win and try to replicate that in the future, okay? So looking back to say, how did I go about putting a plan together in order to accomplish that win or that goal? And then continue to implement and replicate that consistently so it becomes just second nature. And then, of course, celebrate your success. Like Ashley mentioned, there might be some setbacks, there might be some obstacles that we have to face, but not letting that deter you from your success and making sure that the wins that you do have, make sure that you celebrate them as much as you can.
Finally, just an easy way to remember, some good habit building skills is the 3 R's of habit formation: reminder, routine, reward, right? So a reminder is a cue that triggers the habit, right? So that can be something as simple as a reminder in your phone that you set that occurs every Wednesday morning when you want to get up and go work out, or when you want to get up and work on your writing a little bit, right? So whatever that trigger is, you need to find it, and you need to keep practicing it. So it can be the reminder on your phone, it could be a friend, it could be something as simple and easy as, when I color code study times in my calendar, they're all going to be in red because red's unmovable. And so I can't move anything in my calendar in red. So what's your reminder? Those are things that you need to think about, and think about how you're responding to your reminder. It should be something that triggers you enough to stop what you're doing and kind of switch over to your new practice. But it shouldn't be something that's daunting or not fun to kind of get the reminder about. The second kind of action step is the routine. So again, the action you're taking, the habit itself. As Annie has talked about, that repetition piece is really, really important, right? It's not going to be perfect the first time you do it. It might not be perfect the 20th time you do it, but keep doing it, because the more you do it, the more routine it comes. And then our brain is kind of spending less energy into kind of the thought of doing it, and it just becomes part of our natural being, right? That's the goal of habit. And then finally, the reward. So as Annie discussed, creating that wins list, it seems really silly, but it's really important because it helps reinforce those positive behaviors, and you're rewarding yourself for creating a brand new habit, which can be very hard to do and something that a lot of adults struggle with. So if all else fails, remember the 3 R's of habit formation: reminder, routine, and reward.
Great, and to end, we just have 2 apps that you can use on your phone or computer in order to assist with habit building. One is called Habit List, and the other is called Way of Life. So these are good apps that help you track progress, to help set reminders, to see patterns. Are there certain days when your habit falls off track? Are there certain weeks that you were really successful in building the habits? You can see those patterns. Another tool, we love apps, so this is a really good resource for you if you want to incorporate this into the small steps, the tasks that you're using in your habit building. Certainly check these out. These are great.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us today. As always, you can view all of our archived webinars on our website. If you would like to, we have a feedback survey. It's https://tinyurl.com/ARC webinar feedback form. And there you can talk a little bit, give us ideas for future webinars, provide us feedback, and we hope to all see you in 2 weeks for our next webinar. Thanks so much.